Hi, therapy issuers. Thank you for joining in on our conversation between licensed mental health professionals. This is not meant to substitute a relationship with a licensed mental health professional. Should you become triggered or begin experiencing a mental health crisis, please go to your nearest mental health hospital, emergency room, or dial 911 or 988. And always remember, we are human first and therapist second. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and subscribe to our YouTube channel using the handle @CraveCounseling. This is Therapy-ish. All right, welcome back to another episode of Therapy-ish. In today's episode, we're going to talk about immigrant acculturation and mental health.
Period.
Don't judge me on that word, y'all. So today we have Jane Obi, and she will tell us a little bit about herself, where she's located, and how she can be reached, including her social media handles and her in-person locations.
So I am Jane Obi. I am an LPC associate here in Austin, Texas, supervised by Marissa Rivera. I see clients personally, in person, virtually. I'm located in the UT area and Zilker area, and then I see clients statewide in all of Texas. And you can find me on Instagram at greenmeadowswellness_ and on my website, www.ingreenmeadows.com.
All righty. Thank you so much for sharing that information. So can you share your own experiences with acculturation as a Nigerian immigrant? How have these experiences shaped your perspective as a mental health professional?
Yes. So I immigrated to the United States of America when I was 8 years old. And like a lot of immigrants, my journey began in New York, and then I slowly made my way from north to south, and it just kept getting wider and wider everywhere I went. My journey with acculturation has been just that. It's been a journey. I feel like I can't speak on it without like providing some psychoeducation first on the acculturation model, because that will kind of explain how I've come. And so the acculturation model, there's 4 different types of acculturation. There are the immigrants who come to America and they want to maintain their heritage culture and reject the present country. And then there are the immigrants who come here, they want to reject their heritage culture and just assimilate into the American culture. They're the immigrants who come here that don't want nothing to do with neither here nor there. And then there are the immigrants who come here and can do a good job of balancing both their country of origins culture and their the United States culture. And so for me, as soon as I stepped foot on American soil, it was like Nigerian who, Nigerian where. Growing up in Nigeria, you just like, America is just put on this like decadent platform. I just thought it was just the it was the land of milk and honey. And so why am I still holding on to my Nigerians? No. As soon as I got here, the moment I opened my mouth, I ditched my Nigerian accent.
What? That's crazy.
Yes.
Was it hard?
It wasn't, because I was a child.
Got it.
Yes. The older you are when you come here, that like my sister came here at 19 and she still has an accent. Yeah. But at 8, I just would imitate. I'm so great at imitating accents now. If I talk to you long enough, I can sound just like you. So I just imitated the little girl that was talking to me. I just wanted to be, she just seemed cool and fresh. And that's what I wanted to be. I felt like holding on to my Nigerian badge of identity was something that would be like hold me back. And so I just let it go and just adopted all of America.
And then the older you get, you be like,
like, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Let me open up my bag of pride again and remind myself of where I came from.
Right. Literally, I have to. And that's work that I do with my clients is like, let us remind you of who you are.
Exactly.
Because in this rush to just get rid of anything, and really it's just out of a state of survival, in order to fit in, you have to do what needs to be done. And if I have to mask and put on this front and put on this accent and stop eating and talking how I usually do, then that's what I'm going to do.
Okay. All right. So what are some unique mental health challenges that Nigerian immigrants face during the acculturation process, and how do these challenges differ from those experienced by other immigrant groups?
I would say a lot of immigrants that come from collectivist cultures, whether African or Asian, share a lot of similar challenges. But one that I would say is specific to Nigerians or just maybe Black immigrant population is fighting back against misconception. When I first came here, I would have children and adults tell me, "Did you have a pet lion? Did you live in a hut? Do y'all have TV? Did you drive cars? Do you guys shower?" And,
That's actually childish, but keep going. That's very childish.
I tell people they're like, "No, wait." I'm like, yes, way. That really, really did happen. But at the same time, right, when I look at it, when I zoom out, like American media before social media was just showing Africa as just super barbaric. Right. It's the children with the flies and all of that. And there are parts of Africa that are that. And there are parts of Africa that are really developed. I flew in planes. I rode in cars. I had a house. We had water. Exactly. I watched TV. I watched Barney.
That's funny.
That was something that somebody said, "Y'all had Barney over there?" Yes, we did. And that was extremely tough of like, not only am I trying to adapt to this country, but now I'm having to like prove myself.
Exactly.
Whereas like, I feel like there are certain other cultures and then, you get called the African booty scratcher.
Listen, I was about to ask you, did you ever get called that?
Get called the African. And
JC, have you ever heard that saying before? Okay. I know why.
I don't even know how to explain what it even means because I was so young.
I don't know what it means either, but it's definitely the Black versus African.
Yes, that is a whole other conversation in itself.
Oh, yeah.
I would only hear that from African Americans. And I think I was so young that I'm like, what is that even? I don't even know. Like, you can't offend me because I don't know what it is that you're even talking about.
It doesn't even make sense. Like, even if you tried to visualize what an African booty scratcher was, what would that look like? And how would they scratch your booty? You know what I mean? Like, what does it actually look like if you tried to visualize that? But that's neither here nor there.
So it's things like that were difficult to hear, and affects mental health. I think because I came here a little bit younger at 8, it was just like, oh, kids are just being stupid. But I know people who come here older where that like they really internalize that, and that's really difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen instances where like the children assimilate, but the parents don't. And the parents are really struggling with the assimilation process that the kids are going through, such as like the kid growing dreads. It's like, you will not be having that in my house.
Yes.
And it's like, but I'm in America and they wear dreads. Like the people that look like me wear dreads. So I'm going to wear these. Or, whatever the situation is, like just certain mannerisms that are picked up, like you mentioned with being assimilated. I know assimilating in the opposite direction is hard as well.
What do you mean? Say more about that.
Being Black American and trying to assimilate into the African culture. Like if you were born, Black African American, if you were born here and let's say you're 3 generations down and you haven't necessarily visited, you haven't really...
There's a huge struggle. Yeah.
Yes, because there's the religious perspective and then there's the cultural perspective.
Yes. And you feel so removed.
And depending on where there's a spiritual component to that as well. So
absolutely. I have some like 2nd gen, 3rd gen friends where I'm like, it's just the culture. And they're like, but I didn't grow up in it. So I don't understand why they keep forcing me and I don't want it. And it's tough.
It's very hard. Okay, so in your practice, what coping strategies have you found to be most effective for Nigerian immigrants struggling with the pressure of cultural adaptation and identity conflict?
There are a lot of coping mechanisms, but the one that came to mind when I first read this question was food.
Okay.
When I first came to America, that very first day that we landed, right before I ditched my accent when talking to a little girl, my mom and I like went to get food. We just came from the airport, we're starving, and she buys me pizza. And I had never had pizza in my entire life.
That's funny.
In 8 years of my young life. And I just remember being repulsed. I was disgusted. Who would put tomato on top of bread, on top of cheese? Gross. And I looked my mom in the eye and I said, I want to go back to Nigeria now. And she's like, well, we're not. So she found me something for me to eat. But obviously she kept cooking our Nigerian food. And I think cuisine is such a huge part of people's cultural identity. I mean, we see it in the counseling session when people are trying to like get healthy, but they don't want to detach their cultural cuisine from healthier foods because it's a strong part of their identity. Yeah. And so encouraging people to continue to eat the foods that you can in a moderation amount, with moderation, essentially the larger picture is trying to integrate your culture into your new life as much as possible with as much capacity as you can while still holding space for where you're at has been something that I found to be extremely helpful in helping other immigrants cope, as well as, and I know this is another question, finding community.
I feel like that is so easy for Nigerian Americans or Nigerians, but I could be wrong. If you're in a major city. Yeah, if you're in a major city,
we're everywhere.
Everywhere.
We're everywhere.
When I went to Spain, I was like,
yeah.
I went to France, I was like,
we're everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
But you're right. It just kind of depends. Like if you are, I think moving into a larger city, it's a little bit easier. But if you're moving, I don't know how it is in Austin, but in Dallas,
they're everywhere.
Everywhere.
I mean,
listen,
Houston,
I grew up.
Right?
Houston, everywhere.
That's like Lagos is a really popular city in Nigeria. We say Houston is like Lagos number 2.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
finding community and coming from a collectivist culture to an individualist culture is extremely difficult.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to, not only are you now in an individualist culture, you don't know anyone, you don't like the food, maybe. The weather itself is depressing. The weather itself can just be the catalyst for, a mentee bee. And you need people that are going to encourage you, that are going to keep you warm. Because the immigrant experience is super similar across the board. So there's nothing that someone's going through that you're going through that someone else hasn't been through. And so coping through community, food, and just being open and sharing about your experiences.
Yeah. And I know this, I'm going to add this in here. I feel like it's an aside, but please correct me or please let me know how you feel about it. I think religious counseling. And I also think CBT would be really helpful.
It is.
Depending on how deep it is. You know what I mean?
Solution-focused modalities are probably your number one way to get a Nigerian client in your chair. Because we want
an answer.
We want answers today. Like, I don't want problems. I want solutions. I need you to fix it now. And we start with the intellectual, and that's fine. Like, I'm going to get you there, right? To get back into the body and in your emotions. But they need something cognitive. 2 + 2 needs to equals 4. Once you start talking all this big grammar about like emotions and semantics, you're going to lose them. And so they need something simple, intellectual, solution-based that's going to get them there.
Okay, absolutely. All righty. So how does cultural stigma surrounding mental health within Nigerian communities impact individuals seeking therapy? What can therapists do to create a more welcoming and understanding environment?
So kind of going back to spiritually integrated counseling, I specifically went to school at a seminary to learn spiritually integrated counseling. Shout out Seminary of the Southwest, K-Corp accredited program in Austin, Texas. And that school has like 2 different sects. So they have their theology sector, which, they form priests. And then they have this wonderful, culturally informed counseling program in which we learn spiritually integrated counseling, which is something that I found that a lot of therapists didn't get that education in school, like integrating spirituality. So with my clients, we're praying, we're talking about scripture. Spiritual bypass is huge in the African American and Nigerian community. I don't have to go to therapy. I'll just pray it away. Well, yes. But also, like, if you have, God forbid, cancer, you're going to seek chemo and you're going to keep praying, right? Like, if you have as you take your Tylenol for your headache, I take my Tylenol and I say a prayer. Faith without works is dead. And so we still have a lot of work to do in destigmatizing mental health, because Nigerians especially, they see it as mental health and then just mental illness. Right.
What emotions? What feelings?
Yeah.
Why are you depressed?
Why are you There's nothing to cry about.
Nothing.
And so knowing that there's a world in which Jesus and therapy can coexist, it doesn't have to be one or the other. And you're not pursuing some idol by going to a counselor. And the same God, right, that you're praying to is the same God that told me that I should step into this field. So that means that if he sees that I have a purpose, if he sees that I'm meant to help people, that means he knows that I'm meant to help people like you.
Exactly. Well, and two, I think that the other part of that is, like, we see the stories of, like, there were healers, you know, people went here to feel better, whether it was physical, mental, or emotional within the Bible. And it's like, these things aren't new. It just looks a little bit different.
Right, right. And the Bible speaks about wise counsel. The Bible speaks about spiritual gifts, such as the people who have gifts to encourage people. I feel like that's a part of a counselor's gift, is encouragement. A lot of us here are super strong in our faith. I identify as a Christian therapist, but I also see people that are not Christian. And so there's a world in which you can bring your faith to the counseling room and have that be a strong foundation for the work that you're supposed to do.
I too went to a Christian Baptist university. So we had priests coming out as well as clinicians and school counselors. So I went to Dallas Baptist University, so I know exactly what you mean. We started every class session with a prayer or with a scripture, and we dissected it and incorporated it into practice. Like, I don't be like, oh, I'm a Christian counselor. No, right. But if it comes up and that client is comfortable with it, then we introduce it. But I will say, like, a lot of my immigrant families are heavily rooted in, like you said, religion or religious-based day-to-day engagement. And then they're also going from group thought to individualistic.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Well, what role does community and familial support play in the mental health of Nigerian immigrants? How can therapists engage with these support systems to enhance treatment outcomes?
When I treat my BIPOC clients, especially my immigrant clients, I always treat them in the concept of them being a part of a unit.
Absolutely.
And so I'm just going to speak specifically as to the things I've done. I've role played like conversations to have with family members when it comes to setting boundaries.
Heavy on the boundaries.
Heavy on the boundaries, but in a collectivist way, because I've also found, and that's part of my decolonized practice, is like America has a view on what boundaries should look like that do not align with collectivist cultures at all. And so there's a lot of bridging that we have to do of like, what can boundaries look like to where you're not alienating yourself from your family? Because oftentimes that's what my clients come to me thinking boundaries are, because that's what their white friends are doing.
But it's hard when you set a boundary and your family alienates you because you set the boundary. It goes the other way. It goes the other way.
Right.
It's like, my dad has cut me off. My mom has cut me off. Everybody back home has cut me off. The community has cut me off.
Right.
Because I set a boundary of maybe, no, I'm not sending money back home. Or maybe, no, my mom's cousin's best friend, little sister can't come to America and live with me. I don't know this kid.
Yes. And that's a hard boundary.
And you know, when you said it, it's like,
everyone is like, that's the most selfish
you
thing you could ever possibly do. Why would you do that?
You're basically the devil at that point. From that moment forward, and it's like, everybody's going to call you. People you've never heard from before.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Exactly. And there are these there are a lot more immigrant therapists that are coming up that I'm like, which grateful I love. I'm excited. Like, read their work. And there's this one therapist that I follow, and she has scripts of like, okay, for example, one of the examples she gave was, you have that one auntie that's always calling you because you're their IT support. And you're like, I cannot keep answering the phone every time something is broken with your laptop. But is the boundary, like the boundary that might come up in, in a Western culture is like, well, just tell them to stop calling you. That's it. Like, you can't take you can't.
There's no in between.
There's no in between. And the solution was kind of like talking to that aunt and explaining, like, I have like, here is my schedule. Like, I have very limited capacity. Is there a way that I could connect you with Dell support? Right? I will sit here and like Google the number for you and give it to you, or give it to your husband to make sure that he calls. I will give him that information, still providing support in a way that makes sense.
Absolutely.
But is not a complete cutoff. So that is a lot of the work I do when it comes to familial support and community support, as well as like helping with language. I feel like a lot of immigrant children, we're so scared of our families. We're so scared to be like a disappointment. We're so scared to dishonor our people, and we just like repress and keep a lot of things in.
Mm-hmm.
And so just kind of working on the confidence of using your voice and role playing out different scenarios of like, okay, you say that, and like, here's like A, B, C, what might happen, and how are we going to react to that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But setting boundaries can also mean, like you said, you may end up isolating yourself unintentionally.
Yes.
Not you isolating your family, but your family isolating you for how you said no.
Mm-hmm.
Not the fact that you said no, but how you said it.
Right.
You went from, I'm just going to remove this middle step.
Right.
And I'm just going to be like, just don't call me.
Just don't call me. Yeah. Which is wild. But there are some therapists that would be like, oh, this is what you have to do for your mental health. I'm like, no.
I mean, there's, like you said, there's always a middle step. Like, hey, can I give you a call back?
Right.
Or if you don't have the capacity to take the call, hey, like, I saw you call. Is there anything I can support you with? I'm in the midst of X, Y, and Z. Right. Or can I just call you on Friday when I'm free?
I'm going to send you a YouTube video that's going to show you how to do this thing that you're calling me to ask for. Mm-hmm. Right? So I'm still supporting, but I'm not doing all the work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Alrighty. So are there specific therapeutic approaches or frameworks you found particularly effective when working with Nigerian immigrants, and how can therapists adapt their methods to be culturally sensitive and relevant?
We kind of touched on like modalities like CBT, solution focused. I think when we build that rapport with the client and finally get to that place where I trust you, you trust me, we have CBT'd all we can CBT. Let's start working on the emotions piece, right? Let's get the feelings wheel out. Cause it's not every time that you're mad. Like it's not every time that you're just angry. That's like Nigerians love to be like, I'm angry. Okay, but like what's underneath that? Let's start finding language
because
for that.
Is a secondary emotion.
It's a secondary emotion. So that I find that is extremely helpful. And something that I really, really love doing with my immigrant clients is a value sort. Mm-hmm. Especially my in-betweeners, my first gen, because they often come in of like, I know my values with my
back home.
Mm-hmm. But I don't really know that they align with me 100%, but I don't really align with America's values 100%. Like, what am I? What do I find important? And so we'll do a value sort and, we lay out the values cards and eventually whittle it down to 10. And I found that's been really transformative for them to be like, I have a framework. Like, this is what aligns with me. This is what doesn't align with me. And I can move accordingly. Mm-hmm. And that has been really helpful. As far as culturally sensitive approaches, I'll never forget my professor, Dr. Marlon Johnson, who was on a previous episode on Therapy-ish. I went to him one time because I was like, Dr. Johnson, I feel like I'm laughing too much in therapy. Like, I feel like Freud would not accept of this. I am doing am I doing therapy right? This is me when I was in internship. And he said, there is healing in the kiki. Like, kikiing it up is a part of the healing process. And so one, knowing that, like, just a larger framework of knowing that therapy does not have to look like this super formulaic way. And one of my, immigrant clients was like, the therapy space was one of the only spaces she could be extremely expressive with her hands, with her accent, with her culture, because as soon as she left and stepped into the American world, you're too much. You have to contain it.
And it's hard. It's really, do you speak native language?
No.
Okay. I know it's really, really hard when you're trying to, let's say you came later in age and you're trying to remember the translations. Of course, you learn all the language, but when you're home, you use native language. But when you come to America, you use English. And going through an entire day trying to translate that in your head is hard.
It's too much work.
And it's exhausting.
Too exhausting.
So I can understand what you say when you said your client comes in and they're like, whew, I can let my braids down and I can just enjoy my time.
Yes. Like, it's like, those videos of babies when they swaddled them, when they finally unswaddled them and their arms flail. I feel like that's how a lot of my immigrant clients come to me, of like, finally, I can do the accents, I can laugh loudly, I can, scream at the top of my lungs, I can talk all day with my hands, and I'm not going to be judged for it, because in public, people are like, why are you doing the most?
Absolutely.
So allowing your clients as a therapist and naming that, I think that's the biggest thing, is therapists that are like, oh, of course I will allow that. But did you ever name that? And so that's the number one thing that I feel like was drilled into us in my program at Seminary of the Southwest, was broach, 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 broach. With my clients, my spiel is, with me, I want you to be comfortable to say your name how it's supposed to be said. Like, don't tell me whatever the American accented way. Because for me, when I came here, Jane is, and that's another thing people ask me, because Jane is such a simple name. Is that your real name? Yes, it is my real name. It's my middle name. Middle name. I changed it to Jane because I did not want my name to be butchered. And I did not want to spend 5 minutes being like, no, this is how you say it. This is how you say it. But as a therapist, I practice like my clients' names like behind closed doors, just so I can make sure I'm saying it with the accent and everything, because I want them to feel seen in that way. So it really is, all of the modalities really could be incorporated with any client, but it's how you incorporate it and how you're making your client feel seen, and naming. Hey, I realize that I'm not from your culture, or I realize that, you're from here and I'm not from here. I want you to know that it's safe. I want you to speak how you speak. I want you to know that you're welcome here. I want you to know that you don't have to educate me. You can use your slang. That is extremely powerful. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah. It's what we say, code switching. It's the same thing.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. I go between various ones, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us today. So if you can tell us again where you're located, how people can find you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. This is my first podcast appearance since I opened my private practice. And so I feel like the Lord is just moving for me quickly. And I'm really grateful that a fellow Black therapist was the first one to give me opportunity to share my story.
Absolutely.
So thank you for lighting the torch and leading the way. You're incredible.
People need to know we out here.
Yes, we are out here. We do exist. There are only 4% of Black therapists in the country, and it's an honor to be a part of them. And so, I am Jane Obi at Green Meadows Wellness. My practice is called Green Meadows Wellness. It's inspired by Psalms 23:2. He lets me rest in green meadows. So resting, especially for Black women, is a huge part of my clinical foundation. And you can find me on the internet, Green Meadows Wellness in Austin.
All righty. That's it, folks.
Thank you.